Hey, welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD user monthly training webinar. Today is Thursday, May 23rd, 2019, and we are going to be doing a series of project review checkup sessions on different projects sent in by users from around the world. For those of you who don't know me very well, I've been working with ArchiCAD for the last 30 years as a reseller, trainer, and consultant. And in the last 9 years have been focused primarily on online training and helping ArchiCAD users from around the world. Currently, I'm in the middle of running a new series of training lessons called the Best Practices 2020 course. If you're interested in more information on that, on getting a comprehensive resource for mastering ArchiCAD, check out bobrow.com/2020. I sent out an email to everybody who I know on my list, all my closest friends from around the world, so to speak, asking for submissions for this project review checkup session. And so I got about 5 projects, I think, all within the last 24 hours and some even within the last couple of hours. So I haven't had much of a chance to look at them ahead of time. I've been trying to just make sure that I had all of the pieces in terms of libraries and things so that we can look at them together. The aim of the session is to see different people's work, to get a sense of the different architectural styles, to look at the way that they model the building, the way that they document it and organize their project file. And as part of that, I'll be inviting each user to describe a little bit about their practice, a little bit about the project, and then ask some questions in terms of what they want to achieve. In other words, if you as one of the project review people have a question about how to organize your project better, how to get detailed drawings working better, or anything that I can help you with, I'll attempt to give you some guidance as well as some general comments on what I see in the file organization. So I'm going to start with Ted Mengers, and I'm just going to confirm for those of you who have submitted the ones that I have on my list here. And I have, let's see, I have Ted Mengers. I have Michiel van den Dolder. So Ted is in the US. I forget where. Michiel, I believe, is in the Netherlands. We have Andrzej Valent from, I think, Slovakia, somewhere in that part of the world, Eastern Europe. We have Peter Spellman from Santa Cruz, not too far from me, and Will Butney, who's another American. I can't remember where Will is located. So those are the 5 that I have queued up, and we'll start with Ted's, and then I think I'll go to Michiel because he sent that in yesterday, and I have that file open. So we'll start with Ted, and then we'll proceed. So Ted, I'm going to open up your line, and I'm also going to show my screen. So let's see, show my screen here. There you are, Ted. Okay, so Ted, your line is open.
Excellent. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can be heard. So Ted, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and what your focus is architecturally, and then a little bit about this project.
Absolutely. Ted Mengers here in Houston, Texas, and I've been working with ArchiCAD since version 6.5, I think. I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, I wouldn't go anywhere else with it. In fact, I really enjoy the new rendering and organizational aspects it's added. This particular, for my practice, I am a small firm, and I do design projects of my own, but I also do a lot of consulting to other interior designers, landscapers, and architects doing production drafting for them.
Mm-hmm.
This particular project is one of our own, a dental office, a remodeling, so I got to use the remodeling features. You're looking at an overview there. That's kind of an old one. I've done so much since then. But but I was real pleased. We were very careful to keep this fully 3D. There you go. That's better. It's got some of the garden features.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm just taking some of your views here and just jumping in here. So tell us a little bit more about what the aim of this particular remodel accomplished.
It was an old 50s building, a handsome composition, but it was just old and tired and worn. It had a very problematic entry. It was, yeah, right there, that view was not nice at all. It was constricted and very off-putting. So we cleaned it up. We've got a new portal entry there, window walls all around. And hold there, we can, the covered walkway was there, but we added that trellis work up above for shading and just to give it a little more interest.
Okay, where else? Tell me where to go in terms of just giving us a tour of the project, and then we can talk about, you know, any technical questions.
Yeah.
So I opened up your folder in the view map that says PDs, so I assume those are for presentation drawings.
Perfect, yeah, and quick views and all. You can just scroll down those and hop around in those. You've caught most of the views so far.
All right, so this is from the interior looking.
Actually, that's a good point. We tried to make tried to announce the entry a little better. So what I did was I did what I call a portal around the door. That's going to be in a very high style tile around that portal. It gives us the entry was totally flat. You were either indoors or outdoors. This gives a little more sense of arrival and passage into the waiting area.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Opened up and I was going to say, oh, hold there. That's his office, and that shows the problem with the parking. You're looking right at the bumpers of the cars in the parking lot. So one thing I do landscape design as well. So what I did was is that the new one? There you go. I built these stone block walls out from the building to screen it and to provide a backdrop for the landscaping.
Okay, all right. So this is as a remodel project, you're using the renovation filters here. So this is the plan status, and obviously we had the view earlier was the existing one.
And those two slides right there showed what is great about this. I was able to show him the view from the desk in his office, looking at the cars, and then with one click, I brought him to this view and showed him, look what we can accomplish if we do those garden walls.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, big difference. So I could go through all of these views, or are there some specific ones?
As you like. Forgive me, I haven't. Some of those are kind of working views. They're quick views. Yeah, just thumb through those real quick, and I'll point out. This is actually this is a good view. He wanted to do a screen around the air conditioner condensers on the roof, and it would have been a complicated and structure and have issues with engineering and windstorm. So I showed him this view. It's actual. It's 5 foot. Show him if we just extended those two walls up 3 feet, it would accomplish the screening and be much more simpler. And there we had the trees.
Okay. So let's see. So we have an exterior area. It says aerial view, although it indicates that it's a plan representation. So
that's correct. And when it refreshes there, oops, I got the layers turned off. But that's the view I used for the cover sheet. I imported the Google aerial photograph.
So you have a Google aerial photograph. I'm not seeing.
It was turned off. Forgive me.
So should I use a different layer combination here?
That's correct.
Like model 3D or?
Actually, go back to the original plan there and toggle to other layers.
well, this is, I'm in the plan, and
Yes,
this
sir.
is the layer combinations. I can open up the layer settings dialog or just switch to,
I
let's say
don't.
site plan.
I got to confess, I don't maintain the layer settings as
Okay,
I
so
should.
that is an issue, obviously, in terms of
Uh,
using ArchiCAD effectively. So what layer would the Google information be on?
oh, let me look. Let me look. Site. Um, oh, rats! I can't. It doesn't come to mind immediately. I don't see it in the site work there. That's why if you could select something and then toggle other layers.
Oh, okay, that's what you meant by toggle. Okay, so we go to our quick layers here. So this
Yes,
is
yes,
available just since I am always training whenever people are watching. It's
excellent.
available from the a button in the standard toolbar in the US. It's not in the standard toolbar in the international version as far as I know, but you can always go to Window Palettes, Quick Layers. It'll open up this layer and then a layer palette. And then one of the things you can do is to toggle what's visible and what's not. So when I toggle this, we now can see the layers that were turned off, and everything that was on visible layers is turned on.
Why do I not see it? I still don't see it. I'm sorry.
This is plan status unless you had it under a different renovation filter. So
Go to, in the view map, go to the cover sheet.
the cover in the cover sheet in the layout book.
Yeah, perfect. The first one there.
Okay.
Now, the view in the lower right, if you'll
Okay.
open its source view, that'll.
All right, so now it's updating these views, and that means that it's being kept up to date. Just to comment to everyone, this is perfectly fine, but it means that you're always going to be waiting when you flip from one sheet to another. So in general, I like having most of the drawings set up so that they don't update unless you tell it to update those drawings on the sheet. That way you can flip from sheet to sheet without doing it. So we have here two drawings overlaid. We have actually what looks like a drawing. This is the aerial view. It's an internal view here. And then we also have this aerial view 1. That's a name here. So that one, it looks like if I open that source view. So that is actually just the image, the Google image. Obviously, you took a screen capture. We can see your menus and things like that. And this is on a layer. It's on the ArchiCAD layer. So in fact, it is never going to be hidden other than being covered up because it's on the ArchiCAD layer. You can't turn it off. So that is, we are in a, however, we are in a worksheet right now as opposed to the plan. So when we're looking at the plan view of the project, this wouldn't be seen.
There you go.
Okay, so in any event, I'm happy to focus on the questions that you have. It's clear that you're modeling, in ways that communicate to the client that give a better result for, the building, and all of that is excellent. What questions do you have? Because I can make some comments and suggestions in our limited time, just to say things that you could work on. But tell me what your questions you have.
Do you mind going to the sheet details?
So the sheet called details?
Yes, sir. The one that says courtyard window.
All right. So, and I'll fit in window here. So
I'm a little clumsy. I don't feel like I'm best using the 3D views. I keep defaulting to 2D, of course. I mean, the whole model is done in 3D, and these drawings are captured and they're live 3D. But I don't feel like I'm getting the most out of the 3D views like those on the left there.
All right.
Any comments on that? Any ways to enhance?
Okay. Well, one thing is we have this view here. I don't at first glance see exactly where these neighboring drawings relate to it.
That's correct. The far right one maybe show.
This this one here
has markers.
All right. So this one is reversed from that.
That's true.
Okay. And it's on the far right. It's not in proximity. So just in terms of clarity of presentation, I think it's often good to have different views of the same area so that your eye can instantly say, oh, that's an angled view. This is a cutaway. And also, in general, I would probably focus on giving it from a similar side so that it wouldn't be reversed. You know, that isn't always true, but that would be some clarity. Now, so far, you're not putting in any dimensions in these drawings. Obviously, sometimes dimensions are critical in the drawing, and sometimes they're not. You're just really trying to communicate the composition of things, and the dimensions are seen in other drawings. But you could put 3D dimensions on here if you wanted to, so that certainly can make it interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could you zoom into that number 14 there?
Number 14 is
far left.
This is 14.
Zoom way into that colored cutaway. Further left. Yes, sir. Into the 3D there.
Oh, into the the 3D?
Yes, sir. Just a little more left, and yes.
You say 14. I was looking at this number 14.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
All right. So that's another thing is where is this numbering coming from? So just in terms of clarity. So this drawing here has a title. It has a number. Let's look at the numbering here. So 14 Courtyard window is the 3D. Now these numbers here certainly are not in a sequence in the list here, so you're not numbering them based on that. Let's see what the numbering of the drawing is based on. So if we go to the title, and we have NCS drawing title here, let's see, the drawing ID is by layout, and it says 14. So if we were to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, no, okay, it's not there. So this ID, one of the things is that in general, if you number, okay, it's by layout, and the layout, the master layout is 24 by 36 PDG, and your masters are 24 by 36. So if I go to the settings here, we've got a grid, and in the grid setup, we're saying bottom right. So what that's saying is that the number of this is going to be pulled from the one on the bottom right. Now, if we look here, it must just be overlapping, you know, a dividing line. So in other words, if I were to just temporarily move this this drawing, whoops, just select it and move it up a bit. Well, it's still saying 14. So why is that?
There it snapped, 19.
No, I thought in general, if I were to crop it, let's just do a temporary crop here. Oh, and here's now the number you can see changed to 15. So it's basically just a little bit over the dividing line between the 19 and the 15 there. So in any event, the numbering is a little bit confusing to me looking at it, although these numbers will not print out on you know, on the sheet. So putting a number there is fine, 13. But it is a little bit confusing that the number 13 is here and this is showing 13. Yeah. All that being said, you were saying that the 3D one you wanted me to focus in on? Okay.
Yes, sir. See how we lose the resolution of the line weight there?
Okay.
Why does that happen on some drawings and not others?
All right. So what we've got here, if we look at open the source view. And by the way, we have errors occurring during the last operation. That means that there's some library parts either that are missing in my environment and it's having a problem, Do you get errors like this in yours?
I do, and sometimes I bother with them, and sometimes I don't.
Okay.
They are just so difficult to track down.
All right. So this particular view, when I said open the source view, we're seeing it as we would expect. And of course, I can zoom in on it here. Now, as I zoom in, we're getting different amount of foreshortening because the, what do you call it? Moving in a perspective view is moving the camera closer, makes things bigger, but of course we get a different, different view. Now, if I go back to the previous view here, so this is the view that you were showing on the image. Now, of course, it's a distant view here. One of the things you can do is you can change the view settings. So if we go to the what do you call it? The 3D projection settings. This is basically taking a view. I can't even quite tell where the camera is, but you'll notice that there's a view cone that says 70 degrees. What that is saying that you know, you're standing at a certain point and you're seeing the world out not quite 90 degrees, not a full quarter. If you were to change this, or let's just test this, if I say 50 degrees, then it's going to keep the same center, but it's going to be more like a telephoto, just a little bit more. Now, obviously, that's a little bit too much, but let's go back to our 3D projection settings and try 60 degrees here, or one more. Whoops, 3D projection, 64 degrees. Interesting. So the 70 degrees looks like it actually was not too far off. We'll put it back to the 70. I'm not sure what that is, but I wanted to. Okay, so this is now cropping it here. I'm going to go and since we are in a view, this Courtyard window view, if I update this view, if I say redefine with current Windows settings, this may give us a slightly better resolution than what I had earlier. Now, the other thing that we can do, and we'll check that in a minute, is that we can save this out as a different style. We can turn this into a 3D document. So if we go to document here, we can say 3D document, new 3D document. Now, what this will do is it will create a document based on the same view here, and I'll just give it a name. Courtyard window 3D document. And now when that comes, you can see that it looks somewhat different, but it's obviously the same perspective on there. Now let's go to the sheet that we had. So the sheet is here. And let's just see, here's updating. Okay, I think it looks actually a little crisper than it did. It still is a little fuzzy because it's a screen capture. It's basically an image from the 3D window there. Now, if I were to place a view next to it, that is the 3D document here, you can see how crisp that is, obviously.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Now, let's see here. 3D oh, no, that's not the right one. That's the, let's see, just go and undo or select this and get it. That wasn't the one that I just created. I created Courtyard window 3D document, right? So where did that go? So the Courtyard window 3D document is here. Maybe I didn't, I named it as a document. I didn't save it as a view. It's my, so we're going to say, just name it here. Name it based on what I named the document. And now we've got this view. So that was my mistake there. And we're just going to drag this in. And you can see how crisp that is. We'll say, fit frame to drawing. So now it just is cropped in there. Drag this in here, and we'll just resize this down to, something more comparable, and drag it up into, see if I can select it and drag it up into position. Okay, so this is one alternative. You can see that it is showing the composition in different ways. There are some benefits to this because we are seeing more real textures. But on the other hand, this matches what you're seeing in the section drawings, and so it can even be easier for the eye to comprehend. So this is a 3D document, and you can then add dimensions. You can add annotation in it if you want, and it's always going to be as crisp as any of your section or detail drawings. And
it doesn't really have to be to a scale, does it?
Well, in a perspective, there is no true scale, so you just basically make it fit your needs, right? So if I select this and use the scaling, so by the way, this is the scaling, this is the cropping. So that adjusts the frame and would crop it. This would just make it smaller or larger. So I take it down to something like that, whatever makes sense there. So those are some comments just in terms of general. Because of limited time, and we're already at the half-hour mark, I'm just going to make a few more comments of what I saw while we were working.
Yes,
so this is one, just experiment with 3D documents. This potentially, depending upon your zoom factor, may get better or may work better. You can also try doing a rendering of this. And in the rendering, you can set the resolution more precisely. When you've got it in the 3D window, you don't have as much control over the resolution, how fuzzy it's going to be. But if you render it, you can say, I want it to be a certain number of pixels, and it will get crisper. So that's a third style that I don't have time to demonstrate, but you can do a photo.
If I did that sounds great. I could see the materials much better.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
How would I add labeling?
Well, if you do a rendering, it's going to be essentially a JPEG or similar graphic image. You could drop it onto the sheet and then put notes directly on the sheet.
Okay.
But you wouldn't, and another possibility, you could bring that rendering image as just a bitmap image into a worksheet and then put notes in the worksheet, and then that worksheet view could be placed onto the sheet.
Excellent.
You couldn't dimension it because it's just dots. Here you could dimension it if you wanted to do that, and you can also pull out labels that would actually point at elements and pull up information. So clarity of just the resolution would be one thing. Rearranging things so that when you look at it, it makes sense, and we can sort of see what the relationship is between these things. Getting back to the general tips for using ArchiCAD more effectively, you said I don't maintain the layer combinations very, it's just not something that you are used to doing. So you do want to make sure that ideally when you need to find something or when you need to look at a particular part of your project, that you have views that define it as well as possible. So you just double click on a view, bang, you're there. And part of that is also using layer combinations that give you the controls you need. So that thing of, hey, look at the plan view with my Google map, obviously understanding the layers would work. In that particular case, it seems like you were more just confused. We were looking at a plan view, but actually your Google map seems like it was on in a worksheet, and that you were placing the worksheet onto your cover sheet just as a background, which of course is fine, but it wasn't on the plan. So that's why we got confused. So if we go to the 3D model, just in general, so if we go back to something, let's see, here's an interesting section, breezeway. I didn't look at that. All right, so here we actually have a cutaway section of the wall at the breezeway. Is that right?
Yes, and at that window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think it's good to have all of these. You can jump around and obviously just create as many as you need. Good to pare them down, when you realize you don't need to work on an area anymore. You can delete those or put them in a folder, called it old views or something. You have, pretty extensive set of working PDs there. Now, if I look at the modeling, whoa, that's interesting. When I was just zooming in, it zoomed way past that. All right, so we have an issue here that may be something that you want to correct, and that is that obviously this slab, or it's a roof element, but it's a fairly flat roof, is going into the wall, and it's not doing a clean intersection. Now, if I look at the this little icon here, it says that solid element operations is in operation with something building a existing OH. I'm not sure what that is, but it's not one of the ones that's in this view. So it's obviously not affected or being affected by this wall. Now, what I would want to try first off is selecting these two elements. And by the way, let me put on my quick select here so that I can select things more by just hovering over them. So I've got the wall and the roof. In order for them to pay attention to each other, we need to either do a solid element operation or manually trim, let's say the roof so that it doesn't go as far in, or we need to use what's the connect command. So if I go to connect here, this is something that could be used. If we try to trim elements to roof and shell, this may cause issues because the wall is both below and above. So I'm going to try the merge elements, which basically tells ArchiCAD to focus on how the building materials intersect with each other and which ones have priority. I say merge elements here. We're not seeing any change there. If I do the connect trim elements to roof shell, all right, we see a change that is not helpful here. So let me undo back these two steps. So the other thing we need to check in order to connect them, in order to make a, how this would fit in to this, is to look at the building material priorities. In fact, actually, so this is the upper wall, and it's in fact the lower wall that needs to be connected. So that's the other issue, is that I need to go and connect. Okay, well, not the end result we wanted, but it is now they're paying attention to each other. So I'm going to undo this, and we'll do the merge. Let's see if that merge helps. There we go. Now we can see that the roof components are intersecting and blocking out the what looks like the interior skin, but stopping at the wall framing. Now I don't think that's correct, but you can see that now they're relating to each other. So yeah. in this case, what you'd want to do, and I'll just do a quick test here, just as a final example of refining the model so that your sections will give you what you want, is with these two selected, I'll go to the options menu, building materials here. When you have elements selected like this, and you open up building materials, or in general things like surfaces, it will highlight the elements or the building materials that are in use. Now you can see gypsum board has a lower priority. These are priority bars than the stone veneer. Insulation rigid has a higher priority than that. And then steel deck and sheathing plywood, and here's 2x framing plus insulation. So right now, the framing plus insulation, which is probably this core here, has a higher priority than, for example, steel deck, which I don't think makes sense because we'd want to have this steel stick into it. Now, you can realign these by selecting them and changing their number. You can also literally just drag it down in the list, and it will change its number so that it sorts this way. Now, I don't know if this is going to be correct, but when I say OK, we will see a difference. And this is the sort of thing you need to adjust get it working in general, and then all your intersections will work. So you can see now the steel deck is going through here. So whatever this upper part here, if it needs to go in there, then that has to be adjusted as well. So in terms of your modeling, you know, you've got an elegant looking design that communicates well, but you want to make sure that as you are cutting sections, that these things are cleaning up and giving you a good section right off.
Yes, nice. Do you, as regards the priorities of the building materials, do you ever duplicate and create some that are, change the priorities for the same materials?
Yes, occasionally, but essentially you want to do that only when there are no other solutions. Like, for example, if we made this steel deck higher and it caused a problem with somewhere else, okay, then maybe we need to have a lower priority steel deck and a higher priority. You know, occasionally you'll need that, but in general, most of the time, if you get them in the right order, you know, they'll work because they fit in with construction practice. You know, what elements are stronger. So, so I see a comment from Jimmy. So the comments in Slack, just for those of you who are in the best practices course, we have our Slack workspace. I can show these on screen, not that there's a lot to see right now, whereas the ones that are in the standard GoToWebinar, I can see them, but I can't show them on screen. GoToWebinar doesn't broadcast them. So I'm just going to read off some questions here and make some answers. Jerry says, I heard that you are a landscaper. Have you considered using Twinmotion for better landscape views? So Jerry asked that. Ted, I know you actually have set up Twinmotion. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and tell us briefly what you feel about using Twinmotion.
Oh, I love it. It is. I love the way it syncs with ArchiCAD. It has so much going for it. It's you can use it on a Mac. All the other programs are Windows only. It's very intuitive. It's frustrating though. There are a lot of commands that are not documented, and there's no way to find out how to do things or why to do them. Otherwise, yes, I use it more for rendering than I do internal center render in ArchiCAD.
Awesome.
It allows you to get weather and time of day and textures and things just beautifully. Now, as regards the landscaping, if I could ask Jerry, it has very limited plants. I wonder if he's used it and imported plants from other programs.
That'd be a good question. So Jerry, feel free to just type in your comments. Brief note, Twinmotion used to be an expensive add-on that you could get to connect up ArchiCAD for rendering and visualization. And now recently it was acquired from Advent, the company that is probably best known in my mind for Artlantis, although they are also an ArchiCAD distributor, the ArchiCAD distributor in France, as far as I know. But Twinmotion was purchased by a gaming company, I think Epic Games, something like that, the ones who make Unreal Engine. And so now it's apparently for the next 6 months or something, it's free. So check it out. I don't have any real information about it other than that announcement, which just came about a week ago, certainly very recently, and worth checking out. Okay, so, and I've heard it's wonderful and there's a learning curve, and their documentation up to this point hasn't been as good as some people would like. Okay, so now Konya has a question about, do we have time today to ask questions for the files we've sent? So I've taken the projects that were submitted ahead of time for project review during our public ArchiCAD user session, and I'll be focusing on them. But Konya, you're a member of the 2020 course, and so I will be continuing after 3 o'clock with our standard coaching program, which has a different connection link. And so then I'll be able to look at your file and answer those specific questions. Okay, so just some comments from the GoToWebinar questions. Quite a few saying hello from Newcastle and from Rich Matthews and Paul Galliford and a bunch of people saying hello. Jay says, do you use the renovation filters? Yes, definitely we saw changing from existing to new, we saw that use of, or that quick change to say, here's what the view would be with the new, walls, retaining walls, or walls blocking the view of the parking. And a couple of comments about I had certain things selected like the flashing, not the wall, so that was my mistake. I did figure it out. Mackenzie says, how did you drag and drop the building material to update the priority? Did I use a key to help drag it? No, when you're in the building material dialog box, you can literally drag the materials around if you have them sorted in priority order. You can sort them by alphabetically, so maybe find a material by name. But if you click on the header for priority, then it will list them by priority, and you can literally just press your mouse down, drag, and drop it, and it will move into that position and change the priority so that it sorts numerically in that. So it's a convenient thing. You could also type in a new number and it would just move up or down, but dragging it is very intuitive. Fran, you says, is this where you can post comments? Yes, I'm seeing those. So that's fine. And he mentions, he or she, Twinmotion has a small library compared to Lumion, but you can always use objects from SketchUp if you find the one you need. There's a tip. Okay, so Ted, thanks for sending this in. I'm glad to see what you've done. A lot of good work there, and I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to give you some suggestions.
Thanks for the tips, very helpful.
All right, you're welcome. So let's go on. Let's see if Makil is on the line here. So Makil, or I guess Michael would be the closest equivalent. So Makil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. So let me go and switch to your file. Now you sent 2 files here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your firm, and then about this project.
Well, I live in Rotterdam, and I work in an office, and we do commercial housing. And this is a project where we have a lot of options. So we just finished the phase of presenting all the options for getting the permit. And now the buyers have chosen their options, and I could reduce the amount of options to focus on the ones that are actually been sold. So that's what you see here now. I see the zones are on, and they kind of show up as volumes. Which,
okay. So I'm just getting this. I want to get it a little brighter to look at. So I'm just going to take all the light up here so we can see this. There we go. That's much easier to look at. Now, by the way, I think I took this 3D view, which was one of the only ones I saw at first glance about 3D views. So just as a general comment for all of you, if you're working with a client or you're giving a project to someone else to look at, it does help to have views that are organized, that are easy to understand, and particularly the 3D views. I always gravitate, maybe because I'm actually not an architect. I'm actually just a normal human being who loves working with architects. So I look at the 3D first. I'll look at the plans and I'll look at the worksheet, the working drawings, but I always want to see the building, right? So I look for, where's there a 3D view in the view map? And then separately, 3D views save different attributes. If I double click on this, this view is looking off in some really odd direction. I had to go and say, fit in window. Now it's looking, at least in the right direction, sort of use my orbit to get in here. And then, of course, you see how dark this is. So just a tip, if you go to the 3D view options, 3D projection settings, you can change the sunlight settings. You can move the sunlight around, but I think that it's dark on all sides because the sunlight is set to be, and the ambient light is set to be so low. Now, you can absolutely do that if you want, but I recommend, taking this up quite a bit because it's just so much easier to see, when you have more light on this. And now let's just say that this is a view
That's
that
actually quite helpful because I always struggle with that, and it's probably in the template because it's always too dark. And what I always do is go to this setting, change the sun to be faced on the facade I'm in, and that's tedious. So I should change that.
So you can do that. You can rotate it around, but by actually just boosting the light, the whole thing is going to get brighter. You see how in the background, how it got just much easier to look at. Now, if I rotate this around, we'll see it's a little bit dark on this side, and I could move the sun position, but at least it's sort of legible. At least I can see that. Now, once I've got it the way I want, I could right-click on this and say Redefine with current window settings, and that's going to mean that the next time this is double-clicked, we'll have this view. That's a heck of a lot better than the view that I had before because that was pointing in empty space and was really dark. So I'm going to say Redefine, and now anytime you double-click on it, we'll start here. So this is a good tip. And of course, you can say, let's just very quickly, if I'm in another view, maybe this is another view like this, I can go and say save this view, and we'll just give it a new, view from another angle here, and this view now becomes different ones. And I can just double click on one, double click on the other, and of course, that's how you start to be able to just have a bunch of views with the right lighting that you can then go anywhere you want in the project. So, so tell us a bit about this project. You said that there were a whole bunch of options. I mean, so are these all then potentially one building, just different versions of it?
Yes. One thing I chose to do, because there's a main mass, that's how I call it, that is either white or it's orange-red. So
this orange-red, or this one, I guess maybe here. Well, okay. Well, anyway, so this you're talking about this area? Yeah. Okay.
So what I've done is I've drawn that type of house twice and just changed the color. So what I do not like how it's set up is that I have to maintain the two floor plans when they're actually exactly the same. So I've been watching the videos from Tracy Stone's office. And maybe, I don't know if you've seen that file, but I've sent a JPEG. And that was very helpful because during that session, there was a possibility to say, fill in the module ID and do a graphic override on it. Because then you don't need to maintain two models to get things done. It would be a lot quicker that way. But as can be seen in the JPEG I made, I sent this to the dealers, is that it changes a lot more than just the surfaces I want. So I'm not sure if I'm doing it right or.
Now, by the way, you mentioned that we're seeing some zones. Is like this is potentially a zone here.
That's so probably in the.
Let's look at the layer combination. Right now, this is on custom. So again, just as part of today's session, I'm going to be focusing on how to improve your, not just your model, but just the way that you work with ArchiCAD. In general, when you have any view, it's best to aim for having a layer combination that you maintain. That way, if you decide to tweak the layer combination, all views that reference it will be updated. So having a custom layer combination means that it's just going to remember whatever it was at that point in time, and it will never update when you.
All my floor plans have that. but I focus on what the client asks, and what the client asks is always 2D. So I mainly use the 3D screens to better my 2D floor plans and sections and
All right. Well,
facades.
but so my point here is that you said, oh, the zones are showing and they shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
So let's go to the layers. And so the zones are on.
Yeah, it's the Z and then NEN. It's on the bottom.
Nen. All right, so this one here,
yeah,
right?
And there's another Z that should be closed.
There's another one here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I've just made these changes here. Now we didn't have any layer combination active, so we don't have to do an update. But in fact, we should just create one, and I'll just call this 3D views. All right. Now, of course, maybe you have other ones that are for 3D views, but when I do this, now this particular layer combination, I can tweak. We've turned off the zones. Maybe there's some other changes we want to do. Maybe there's a 3D views without the site and a 3D views with the site, you know, things like that. So we'll just say okay. And now you can see your zones disappeared. Is this, what is this over here? This.
It's a glass fence.
Okay. All right, glass balustrade. Okay. Okay. So that's one tip there, is to work with and maintain your 3D views. Now, by the way, this view, when I say view from another angle, you notice that the zones have come back. Why? Because it's back on the custom layer combination. If I go to the settings here, I can say, you know what, instead of using a custom one, use 3D views. Now, at any future time, not only will this view always show it correctly, but if I tweak that, I added new layers to or change them in the 3D views layer combination, then this view will be good. And similarly, if I go to the 2-3D, I want to go in here and change the setting. In general, that's going to give you more of what you want. All right, now you mentioned the issue with having multiple versions of this with just some small changes and having to maintain the same plan in multiple copies. So if we go back to the plan, so where would be good on the plan to go to?
It's the one where your cursor is at. It says first. So and the one beneath is the.
All right, so I'll take the first one here. You say this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And say zoom out to fit in window. And okay, so I'm going to hide the alignment lines, the guidelines, by using the keyboard shortcut L. That makes it just clearer. I can always type L again and get back those lines. So that's a nice shortcut there. I'm also going to hide the grid because although you may find it useful in many things, it actually, for me to see it better, it's not helpful. So temporarily, I'm going to go to the, where is it? Construction grid display. I'll turn that off. So now that's just a little bit easier on my eyes, right? That's a state of the program, so you can turn it on or off at any time. It doesn't affect the model, and it doesn't affect other files. It just simply is our preference at the moment for how I'm viewing things. Now, obviously, so we have a bunch of variations. So all of these are the same building, just different variations?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I see that you've got a double arrangement here. So is that the way it's going to be handled? Is these staggered back from one to the other?
Yeah, so there's 3 types actually, but 2 of them are quite similar, and one is a double house under one roof. So it's 2 families living under one roof.
Right. Okay. So you have 3 different variations. So the end result of this, once decisions are made, is that you'll have 3 variations for different conditions. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll have like one that's freestanding and one that's sort of mated to adjoining.
Yeah, so if you go to the layouts, there's a nice layout where you can see it's the 2.1. Yeah, that's the one. And it says here that
okay, it's taking a moment to refresh, so it's
okay.
a clock here or a watch. Okay, now I should be able to zoom out. No, it's still beeping at me like, hey, I'm busy. So a general comment again about when you go to a layout sheet, if you always want to guarantee that it's up to date, have the drawings on auto update. But if you want to be able to just open it up and quickly see things, knowing that they're either up to date or there's some minor things that you could update, then I suggest that you turn off the auto update. The way that's done is you select one or more drawings and you go into the settings for it, and there's a setting that says update type auto, change it to manual. So you can do that for all the drawings on this sheet. So I can go to the drawing tool here, do Command A or Control A, that's all the drawings here, and I can say that I'd like to change this to manual update. Now, we can always change it back to auto update, and we can always just go and click on update here. But this way, I would have opened this up and instantly been there. So just you know, when things are relatively stable and the project, and you're finding it annoying to wait for things to update, just turn it on manual. And then the only time that you absolutely have to update it is when you're going to go print. And then you would want to make sure everything's up to date. Okay, so we're looking on the sheet.
Can I focus on the third facade in the middle?
Okay, the third facade in the
from
middle.
the left, because there's two windows, and there's a yellow or orange ochre. It's actually, but I made that with a niche. I had a lot of trouble because I got this project and I had to transform it, and I used modifiers to get to have just one composite and get it working for all the different situations, because there's a concrete thing above the doors, above the entrance, and I needed it to be at the exact height, and I used the modifiers to get it done. And because it seems like they're easy facades to model, but I had trouble because my colleague had all these different walls and they were intersecting wrongly in the floor plan. They were just making the floor plan messy, and I did quite a good job in getting things better, but still it's in your 3D model and your facades, you sometimes see lines, and I know that it sometimes is caused by a wall that is slightly tilted, and it can be so many things, and I'm just struggling with that. So especially the modifiers, I noticed that I could not have the inner wall be lower than the outer wall, because then I would have difficulties with the facades.
Okay, all right, so this would be an interesting thing to look at. So I'm going to say that given our limited time, I'll see what I can do in terms of just understanding your issue and maybe giving you some tips for this particular 3D area. And then we'll talk a little bit about modules and dealing with multiple schemes. And I'll just say before I even get in there that there's no perfect solution, because ArchiCAD doesn't have a system of scheme management, but there are some approaches that can work. You're probably using most of the best practices, but there are probably a few things that we can refine. Now, if I want to look at this area here in 3D, there are different ways I can do it. One thing is I can actually select elements here. And I'll just select a few elements here, and then I'll use the option to show selection in 3D. Now, this may not be perfect because I may not have included everything we need to see, but this is an interesting option that is often forgotten about. Not only can you select things on the plan and say, well, show me these things in 3D, you can do things in an elevation. And you can see now, I can see just the elements that are, in consideration. All right, so when I look at it, just to understand it better, we have a complex profile wall that obviously is fitting underneath a ceiling or a roof there, and the facade is going up. Now, this groups are suspended. So what is this here? So this, when I click here on this, it looks like it's all part of the same wall. So tell me how this was handled to get the different material in there.
There's a window, and it's not actually a window. It just breaks a hole in the wall, and you can offset it by a little and say it has to have another surface.
All right.
So
now, so this is a niche element.
Yeah.
Now, I realize that the reason why when I click on any of these things that everything gets selected is because it's part of a hot-linked module. So in order to edit these things, you've got them, or in order to manage them, you've got them in a separate module file. Now I'm going to go and open that file, and this is where things get complicated, but it's also part of, just managing this. So we are in...
I call it my workplace. That's where I manage my modules.
All right. So we are in your Cozen Optis phase 1 here, but I saved a copy with some slight changes dealing with the libraries. And then you have your modules. So I'm going to go to the modules. That's the zip, but this is the modules
archive file.
Right. And so I'll say launch a new instance, and we'll get that open. And all right. So you have two windows, and you have a niche, and the niche element here is got a different surface, and so that's all fine. You mentioned that there's an issue with the seeing lines on the facade when you have interior walls meeting the element, meeting that wall.
Yeah, I had a lot of lines, and in each situation there was something different going on. I had mistakenly made floors 3D, so they're floors with holes in them to spare concrete, and I 3D modeled them, but I saved them as walls instead of beams. And then those complex profiles were interacting with my walls, so I had to give them a little offset so they would not interact with my walls and give lines where I don't want lines to show up. And another thing is some walls were slightly tilted, and then there were modifiers preventing me for having neat facades, clean facades without closing lines.
Okay, so when you describe it, I note that one of the issues you had is that the walls were interacting when you didn't want them to, and you ended up pulling the wall back a little bit so it would not interact. So there's another way to deal with that that is actually cleaner. I mean, you made it work, but I want to point out another way to do it. So by the way, missing library parts, we've got a bunch of texture files. In order to deal with that, you did send me some libraries. I'm going to go add in from what you sent. Now you sent me the entire ArchiCAD 22 folder. It was like a gigabyte and a half. We don't need that. All I need is the surface catalog here. And then also I found that while that gave me something, I also took your, let's see, I think it's, I also took the bibliothèque. So this is the library that is your firm by Carmen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just adding those two, and we'll reload and apply. And this says 157, and it'll go down to just a very small number. And hopefully when we go to 3D, we'll see 16, it's better. now I'll just leave that there. So where is the this particular case that we're looking at? If I zoom out here, and let's just talk about this before we do that. So you have a bunch of things here that are different copies of the file, and this is your workspace. This is where you do the actual modeling, and then you pull it into the other file we were looking at. Okay. So let's look at. Do you know where the one is that relates to that facade?
There's these arrows pointing towards. Yeah, that's the one.
So is this one here?
What I usually do is put a double marquee around, and that's why I have the trace on. So I can always save it as a module that way, and I always save it the same way. And I have notes in my screen, so I know. So
are you tracing then using the magic wand on the, using the magic wand on this border?
Yeah, that could be a way to do it, but I just click double, click two points.
It didn't recognize that as a traceable thing, but here, if I do this, so here's our marquee. I'll go to 3D there, and okay, so we're seeing this building.
The holes indicate where the option goes. Sometimes the facade is just straight, but if somebody decided to have an extension, that's where, why I use this model, this PLN to manage my modules.
Right. Okay. So we are seeing this funny, area because this is using a surface that's not in my environment, even though I loaded at least some of your stuff. So we'll just have to ignore that because that's obviously just distracting. But now if I click in here, we're seeing this is a wall that I clicked on. But if I go to, let's see if I hit escape and we deselect it and I go to a corner point, so that's a window. But if I hit the tab key, then let's see, I'm trying to select.
Yeah, you've got it. Oh.
Well, let's see if I'm going to hover over it. And that's the wall, but I'm not seeing the, it's not giving me a snap for the, so this is the niche.
Yeah.
So we can see this, the handles on here, we open this up. So this is just a, so you niche here, and I guess in English it would be niche or niche. Okay, so you've got some settings there. Now, it looks like that's working okay. So let's just focus on getting the walls to connect up on the interior without giving you some extra lines there. Now, we're looking in 3D. Let's look at it. Do you have an elevation of this, or do you have elevations in this? Probably not in this file.
Yeah, I have it. If you just go to the, that view, then there must be some sections there. Yeah, that's where the elevations are, and then there's sections above it.
Okay. Well,
seeing that this is.
Well, you were saying I wanted to just see what would cause the issues on the facade, because right now we're seeing textures, so we're not really seeing it as cleanly. I'm going to show you a nice way to test this out. If I go to the View menu, we go to the 3D styles. We can switch to a vectorial style, and then we're going to end up where we're seeing just the pure lines. And this is the same analysis that would be done in an elevation. So in other words, if we're going to see extra lines somewhere in the elevation, we'll also see it here in a vectorial view. So this is a great way to study without having, while you still have more abilities to move around in 3D. So let's go back to the plan and look at that particular area. So zooming in on this and trying to zoom in. So we are on floor 0. So I assume we probably need to go up a story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'll just use the keyboard shortcut to go up a story, which is Command up arrow or Control up arrow. Is this the right story?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, question is, where's the interior walls that you were talking about? Are they on a different layer?
It's the wall on the upper side of the screen. Mark B, it says. And,
This,
yeah, that wall, especially with the extensions, gives a closing line in the facade with the wall that's on the ground floor.
oh, okay, all right. So basically,
and that has to do in all those different modules I had. Sometimes it had to do with the floors being not beams but walls, and they were interacting with each other. So I had to give them a slight. And another thing that was causing the problem was that this wall was slightly tilted. So I've solved all the problems, but yeah, it would be nice to know quicker ways to see where things are going wrong.
All right. Well, one thing is, you were saying this wall was slightly tilted. You mean that the left and right points here were not
tilted is not the right word, but I can't find it. It was on an angle in a way that it was not connecting to the wall that was beneath it.
Right. Okay. So let me just force the issue in terms of creating a situation here. I'm going to turn off the option for auto intersection. That allows me to draw walls or edit, let's say, the length of a wall and not have ArchiCAD reinterpret it to try to connect things. So now I'm going to go and just move this, if I can zoom in, and take this endpoint up a little bit there. All right, now you can see these two walls are no longer intersecting. Or alternatively, I could take it down to here, and now they're again not intersecting. Now, if I took this out to the facade, we end up with something that sort of has a corner, but they're not cleaning up to each other. Now, if these were straight and they weren't cleaning up, it would make sense to force them to clean up by telling it to find the natural ends by using the intersect. So when I say use the intersect, now we get a clean result. Of course, this is still not square. So that's what we would say it's skewed or not square to the axes. So how would I get that to square up? So this point here, if I hover over it, we'll get this little, what do you call it? Snap
grip.
There. I can also drag a snap guide right on top of this. Now I know that I've got, an alignment point here, and I can take these and move this up to there. And what I did, because I had both walls selected and I used the pet palette to edit the end, they both adjusted, and this one became square, and this one obviously just extended back to where it was originally. So that should be a clean result here. Not quite sure. So this, you have a dashed line that's something else.
Well, there's walls that the constructor said it can be thinner. So those are lines that help me to see if everything is aligned.
Right. Okay. Now, so that's one thing just in terms of getting things square using guidelines and things like that. But you were talking about pulling.
Can you go a few steps back? Undo, because when this is extreme, but if you go to the facade now, you can see that there is a closing line. Because for me, it was just a few millimeters.
Yeah, so we get a bunch of extra lines there.
Yeah, so you see the two window frames on the right side, and the line is closing between the wall on the ground floor and the first floor. So if you could show the other facade on the right side, just move it a bit, then you see what I mean.
Okay, well that's obviously
because this is clear. We know why that line above the window frame is showing, but there can be so many reasons that it's showing. It can either be the modifiers, the floors that are not. So
right.
Yeah.
So in general, of course, let's just redo these two steps, and then go back to that 3D. So now it removes it. So this wall here has to be in the same plane perfectly lined with the lower wall so that this surface is continuous in terms of a plane. They also have to be the same surface. In other words, like what they're painted the same or coated the same. Now, is this supposed to be a different surface down here?
Yeah,
okay.
That's a black brick.
All right. So so far, I don't quite know. I mean, you said that you struggle with it because things weren't cleaning up, and you eventually figured out that this wall wasn't square, and then you got it square and you got it cleaned up, and now it looks good. So is there any mystery remaining, you know, like that you can't get it cleaned up or not?
Well, it's just that I had, if I would have known in advance all the aspects that could be causing that, so it's hard to see what's causing it. That's just
okay. All right.
The
so the things that I look at, the things that I look at are, I select, you know, if things aren't cleaning up, I'm going to select the walls like this and look to see that the reference lines are actually meeting at a point. And if necessary, I'll zoom, you know, way tight in. Of course, if they're off, you can manually adjust it, or you can use this intersect command. Now, if the walls are made of different types of composites or different components, then that can cause some complications. But it looks like these walls are very similar to each other, and so therefore meeting at a corner should be very natural, right? Now, in terms of something being square, if you want to just check, hey, is this really square? Is it in line? If I press down on this and I'm in the edit mode, right? Okay. When I hover over this, you can see it says angle 0. You know, if it was slightly off, this is going to be angle, you know, not 0, 0.16, you know, or something, you know, whatever that is. Now, the measurement right now is from the other end. In other words, you can see the distance is 7209, so that's 7 meters from the other side of the wall. So we're getting an angle and a measurement from the other side. So you just want to verify that, because if I use the Shift key, well, let's see, sometimes when you use the Shift key, it changes. Yeah, now if I move this up and down, you can see the distance is showing from the new edit origin, which is that corner that it started with. You know, you can see that it's only 27 millimeters from that going straight up. But normally you would be looking at the distance and the angle from the other side. Now, in general, when things are not working, you have to decide which point is correct. In other words, is this corner correct or is that corner correct? You know, because being square, you know, by itself, it could be either way. So you need to look at whether it aligns up with other elements down below. You know, you can use virtual trace as well. So I imagine you've used the virtual trace where you say, choose a reference, and I'll say below current story. And then, you know, we can potentially see, if I were to take this wall and force it, I'll just take it out of the way. We can see a line here for the other story. And if I turn off the virtual trace, well, no, we're not actually, see, that's on, that's off. So we're not seeing the other story. Do you have the different layers for the stories?
Yeah, I think you should close the layer with the red lines, because that's interfering.
Okay, well, let me just go here to trace and reference and say we'll put on, we'll hide the fill so we can see through it. But I'm not seeing the lower wall at all. So I'm just guessing that if I go down to a lower story.
Yeah,
now,
that's because, yeah. That's where the extension is coming. So that's
so I'm not seeing the
on
wall.
the left side, there's a wall.
Is it on a different layer?
No, there's no wall there because there's an extension planned there.
Oh, okay. All right. So there is no wall. So, oh, that's right, because it was only under the
on the left side.
Right. So let's just look on the left side then, where we would be able to. All right. So there's a wall here, and if I go up to the upper story, now we can see the trace and reference in that area. So in the event using trace and reference, so let's see, is my connection now sounding all right?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, all right. So are you still seeing my screen now that it's just the Mojave Desert image?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so apparently having 3 ArchiCADs open with some large files, etc., just got to be too much. I tried to I restarted my computer before we had the webinar, and apparently 16 gigabytes of RAM is not enough to handle these particular files. So I apologize. So we'll have to move on to other ones. My general comment, Michiel, is that you're in terms of the modules that you'll need to just find the common thread in terms of what parts of a plan are going to be repeated or maintained in multiple contexts. And by the way, am I still, are you still hearing me and seeing me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. I see the GraphSoft bug reporter is now on here, and I'm trying to tell that to quit there. So a couple of tips. One is that you can maintain within the same file the modules instead of in a separate file. You can have it on a remote story. This is what Tracy Stone's office has done. By doing that, or have multiple stories down below, by doing that, you don't have to have multiple files open, and it becomes easier to update things. So you can review the approach that they used in that session that we went over. Second, you just have to be as clever as you can with which parts of the building are constant, in other words, that don't change, and ideally have only one copy of that, so that it's being just referenced in to the variations that you've got. Now, maybe you're already doing that, but you know the ideal is to never have more copies of things than you need to, because it's more to maintain. And
when you look back, you always think it can be smarter, but
yeah. So I mean, I know you're trying to do that. Now, this thing of overriding the colors, like to say, hey, in this version we're going to have it one color, and in that version these walls will be a different color. It affects the entire module that and both sides of the wall. So you can't, you know, it becomes a tricky issue in terms of like the graphic overrides is not a perfect solution. It's just a workaround for being able to make comparisons. Let's look at it this way, let's look at it that way, you know. There are limitations there. You can sometimes get by with renovation filters, because there's an option in renovation filters to be able to say that this version here, a particular module is on a particular renovation filter and only on that filter. So, you know, instead of just saying it's either demo or new or existing, you can say version 1 and version 2. You can have multiple renovation filters and pin an element or a module to that renovation filter, so it only shows. So those are some things that you may want to explore and see if they can help you reduce the amount of duplication and having, you know, this repeated all over. So I'm going to need to move on. Michiel, any final comments or questions there?
No, thanks for looking into the project.
Okay.
And,
well, glad we at least took a look at some things. Hopefully next time we'll be able to keep it all going. So then I'm going to mute your line there and we'll go on. Let's just see, who do I have next? And I know we're at the 90-minute mark. I had planned to do this for 2 hours, so we'll see what I can bring up in the next bit here. So got a little bit off track. So we did Ted and we did Michiel. So Andrzej, let's just take a look at this. Now, Andrzej, I think, is in version 22, international version. So let's go here. And let's see if Andrzej is, of course, still on. That would be important. Andrzej, here. So Andrzej, I've opened up your line.
Hello, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Andrzej. Good. So tell us a little bit about your firm and this particular project.
Well, I'm a one-man company, actually, but I'm working for an architect. It's a long-time project. And this is actually a second phase of our project. We was maintaining it was a factory with the offices, and now I send you a project of the canteen for this factory and offices. So that, and at the moment we got actually I don't know how to say this in English, planning permission, and now we are going to make a documentation for construction.
Okay. So this particular project, you say, is a canteen. So
Canteen.
Does that mean it's a food services area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
For a factory. And so where is this located and where are you located?
It's in Slovakia, and it's close to the mountains called High Tatras.
Okay. And so the factory is one that the main building is not making major changes. You're just changing the food area.
I don't understand. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
So the work is focused primarily in the food preparation and serving area?
No. It's I think they're doing something in mechanical engineering or something. And this is the canteen for the people who are working at the factory and at the offices.
Okay. So by the way, ArchiCAD, I'm still seeing a spinning ball. Oh, here it is. Okay, it finally has woken up. Let's see, we'll go here and we'll see if we can get this one open. Okay, now aside from just sharing it and saying, take a look, do you have any specific questions?
Well, I have a problem with the details and with the renovation filters. But maybe you will see when you open the project.
Okay.
I can't actually change the renovation filter from existing to show all, and I don't know why.
You're not able to change it?
I'm not able to change it. And
okay, what happens when you try?
Oh, I changed from existing to see all, and then I'm click for redefine, and when I do this, it just go back where it was before. So.
All right. Okay, so we're missing some library parts.
Don't mind this. It's
all right.
I'm also getting this. It's.
Okay. All right. So obviously, since it is in Slovak language, I don't quite know what I'm looking at other than seeing elevations, etc. Where would be a good place to start? Do you have 3D view that we can look at here?
Yeah, you can.
All right. So I'll bring up a 3D view.
But this one is a special one. It's you will see. It's because I just wanted to see an air conditioning system. So.
Okay, so we've got some HVAC in there, and I'll just rotate this around. Okay, it's moving slowly, but it is adjusting. All right, so we've got some mechanical systems in there. If I zoom out and get more of an overview, let's see if I try to navigate around. So we have a green roof, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So is it this building here that is the canteen?
Yes, that's the canteen, and behind that canteen is the factory with the offices.
So. Right. Okay. If I go to the other view here.
You can try it, I think, but then it's just how can I say, it's a construction.
Okay, so it's focused on the on this particular building, leaving out the rest, and
Yes.
showing the framing structure.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Structure things. That's
All right.
just.
All right. So now you were mentioning that your main or one question is not being able to change the renovation filters the way you want it.
Details. Yeah. So if you are in
So let's look at this. Let's look at this. I'll go back to the earlier view here where we're seeing everything, and we'll just go out a little bit. So we're in 3D, of course, and I'm going to go switch my view from show all to existing. Let's just see what happens with existing. All right.
I don't have the problem in a 3D. I have a problems only in a details.
All right, but I'm just looking here. This is indicating that this canteen building exists and the factory does not. If I go to planned status, now we see the factory. So is the factory actually new?
Well, not really. The structure, we use the old structure and rebuilt, everything what we could. Actually, the outside things we rebuilt that are news, the new walls, covers, but the structure we used from the old building, which was before. Right. But the canteen is completely new.
All right. Well, so what's a little odd to me is that you don't have much in the existing plan. So everything that, so you just didn't bother modeling the existing building here?
That's what you see actually. I just left the structure as existing. I removed all the walls and the roof is completely new. I just kept the structure and make this existing in the renovation filter.
All right, so these elements here, the structural elements, you left them alone. You've got a new new walls and roof built around it, and you didn't bother. There was no particular reason to create a model of the existing building walls and roof. So no. It's not in the model. All right, so we're switching back and forth between these things. Now, when I go back to the existing plan here, is this canteen actually exist, or is it new?
No, it's a new, but I put in the existing status or filter because that the factory is attached like as a hot link, and actually it's I tried to something. I don't know how to say this.
So this is, I can see the square handles.
That's a hot link. That's a hot link.
Right. Okay. So this is a hot link, and then this. So this is all within the current file. All right. So just a comment is that you can certainly use ArchiCAD however you wish if it gets the results that you need. But in general, if this canteen building is new, all of these, I would think, would be better served if you made it new, so that when you did existing, you would only see what exists and not these things. Now, it's just more of a confusion than anything else. But when you mention that you're not able to switch status of things, it's important for me to understand what's in what status. Now, you mentioned that it had to do with detail drawings.
Mm-hmm. If you go
show me where you have a detail drawing.
Let's go to the bottom. Yeah, just click one of the detail. Doesn't really matter. Just number one. Yeah. All
right. Now, a detailed drawing is created usually from an original source, although you could just draw it from scratch or bring in a DWG or something else. If I select any element here, this is just a fill. It is no longer attached to the original wall. So these are just fills here. Now, if I say that I'd like to look at the source, one way to do that is to choose the reference and say, browse for trace reference. Now, it looks like we don't have a source for this detail. Did this detail come from a particular part of your model?
Yes, of course. It's from section 1 actually. If you will go to the section 1.
So let's see.
Right click. Yeah.
Let's say open source view here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think, was it this one here?
Yeah. That's the one.
All right, so this source view is set up for show all.
Yes. Okay. But when you go to the detail, then it's existing.
When I'm in the detail, details don't have a renovation filter. At least they don't have one that you can switch in here. Let's just try switching it, and you are changing the renovation filter of a non-auto rebuild viewpoint. So details generally are manual rebuild. Changes will not take effect until you rebuild this viewpoint from its source viewpoint. So you basically, the only way that you can change what you see here and use a different renovation filter is if you rebuild it and essentially discard any changes you've made. So you can change the setting, but there's a real limit in terms of why are you changing the setting? Is it just because you think this is the wrong setting that it's got? What's your issue with it?
The issue was that there was some elements made as a new, and I couldn't just see them in a detail. I can see them in 3D and I can see them in a section, but I couldn't see them in a detail. So I have to change it. I have to change these elements to existing, and then I could see them also in this detail. Do you understand?
Okay. All right. So you have a mixture of things that you're drawing with existing and new, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a little confusing because of the way you're using those filters. But if you wanted to ideally change it to show all.
Just show all. Right. And then go to and redefine this, and we'll just go back to existing.
All right. So if I say show all here, change anyway.
Change
will
anyway.
Not take effect until you rebuild. So I'll say change anyway here.
And
now we'll do the let's see, view, refresh, rebuild from source view. All right. So now we're seeing this rebuild from source view, and it is showing the show all, which is what I changed it to.
Okay.
And then if I redefine with current window settings, then basically it's going to say that this particular view is going to pick up the show all. So now if I go to a different detail here, see here's existing, we go back to this one. All right, so this one still says existing plan. Now, did it get the new information or not?
Well, the best way how we can
all right, so
find out that maybe you can put another new 3D element which we can see in this section, and see if you will.
Okay, because of lack of time here, and this is a rather obscure type of issue, my suggestion would be that you create a new detail instead of, if this is going back to this setting. So this is what I would suggest is we go to the is this our section here?
Yes, that's the section.
Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is, just as a test, I drop this detail, the detail marker here. So I'm doing a new detail. I'm creating a new detail one, and we'll just call this 01A here. And we'll make sure that we're in the show all here. And I'll do a similar one, and I'll just put the marker down off to the side.
I think that you will get all the same result what I did, because I think I already tried this. But anyway.
All right. So now I've got this D01A detail. Now the D01A detail got a missing layer combination, so that's odd. But it's picking up. We've got your detail clone folder. So the clone folder doesn't have an option for renovation filters. Okay, so this is renovation filters, but let's just see if this, if we look at the, okay, renovation filter is not applicable is basically what it's saying, is that it's going to create it based on whatever, whatever you were in the source view. Let's just go into the D01 detail and compare this to the D01 detail. Of course, you put in some annotation, things like that. I'm not quite sure. So this is again
existing.
Yeah. So change anyway. So a refresh, refilled from the source view here. Let me just. So this is in a clone folder. I'm just going to create a new view of this. Just detail test. So I'm creating this not in the clone folder, just as a separate view. It's got show all here. And now we double click on it. Of course, we're in this view and it's on show all. And of course, it doesn't have any information here, but it is, when I double click on it, it is show all. So maybe part of the issue is that you've got it in a clone folder that when it was created, originally, it didn't have the right settings. Now, if we go to the settings of this here, this clone folder, this is not applicable here, so we can't change it, but we can do get current Windows settings, and this may affect the these items because I've just said pick it up. Now I say okay. Now, again, the detail test here is show all. If I go to the details, and let's just go back to this D01 detail, it's existing. Okay, so it's not doing that. Now, if we were to create a new clone folder, so if I go to this one here, so now this is show all, and we created a new clone folder for the details here. So clone a folder. It doesn't allow me to set the renovation filter, Sarah, but let's just see if I details test clone here. Now we go into this one here, show all.
So how did you make it?
All right, so I just created a new clone folder.
Okay.
At the time that I created the clone folder, I had the renovation filter that I wanted to be in effect.
Okay.
So that's because details generally are not related to renovation filters or graphic overrides, it doesn't allow you to select it. But when you create the clone folder, or you create a new independent view, it will pick up whatever is your current setting. So these are actually all the same drawings that you had. They've maybe just got a slightly different setting. Now, I don't know whether the settings are correct because I just used the settings that I had, but this looks like it would work around your issue.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I think there are things in ArchiCAD that are where it is trying to prevent you from making choices that it thinks are irrelevant or inappropriate. And in this case, I think that's what's happening with the details. It's saying, you know what, you should just not worry about that. Just get the stuff from the model and just work with it, because once it's in the detail, you're just working in 2D. You're not going to use existing versus new conditions. So it just doesn't even matter. But when you create it, you do need to be in the right setting. So hopefully this allows you to work around that issue.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Okay, so I see a comment from David Proctor saying, I have this problem too sometimes. I'm not understanding the relationship between the renovation filter and the resulting detail view. I think if I make the detail with, say, existing renovation, but I want new, then the detail does not always want to change to the new renovation setting. So just in general, if you want to have a detail with a certain renovation setting, make sure you have that setting active when you create the detail. And it's possible that clone folders, which are generally useful, can get confused if you want some details with existing and some details with new. I would say probably the general rule would be details should show the new conditions most of the time. So I would create the clone folder for the details with the renovation filter set at new, and that's probably going to serve you better.
Okay.
All right, so that's an answer to David as well as to your question, Andres. So thank you for submitting that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so we are at the 2-hour mark. Let me just see some other comments. So Dean says, I'm working with master template and don't understand your logic or use of clone folders in the template. I find them a challenge to add and arrange the new view within. So clone folders is something that can be confusing. Powerful tool if you work with it as opposed to being confused and therefore struggling and fighting with it. Dean, if you want to jump onto the coaching call, following this one, we can spend a little time on that. Now, I did have a couple of other files sent in, and I'm going to see if I can open up at least one more. So I know Will Butney sent something in at the last minute. Let's see if Will, are you there? Will, I've opened up your line. Lewis has a question. Could you use a 3D document for details and use the renovation filter? 3D documents also are not automatic rebuild, and so might have the same issue. I'm not sure. We could test it. It's a possibility. So Will Butney, I have your microphone open, but I don't hear you. So let's see who the other person was. And we can maybe try to get one more. Will, are you there?
Can you hear me, Eric?
Yes, I can. All right. So you've got this. What version ArchiCAD are you in?
This is 21.
21. All right. So I'm going to open up 21 and tell us a little bit about your firm. And by the way, Peter Spellman, if you're on the line, I'm sorry. It looks like I won't have time to look at your file today because of the way this has worked. But thank you for sending it in, and I'm happy to take a look at it and give you feedback separately or in an upcoming session. So Will, tell us a little bit about this 12th Street residence.
This is a plan I did for a developer who did a tear down in St. Petersburg and wants to build this particular plan.
Mm-hmm.
I work as a single designer in my home office. And since we've been talking about 3D views, I just thought maybe you could help a little bit in doing a white rendering, what I would call a white model rendering in 3D. I haven't been able to control the line work settings and have not been doing a lot of 3D rendering, but would like to do more.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at what you got. So we're talking about 3D renderings. Now I've got some missing parts. We'll see if they matter. I'll keep this handy in case you want to refer to it. If I go to the 3D view that you had open in the file when you sent it, we can see an overview of the building. It looks like we're not seeing all the layers.
Yeah, I think if you go to the layer settings of elevations, it should bring most of it in.
So exterior rendering here possibly, or elevation here, elevation.
Yes. Yes.
All right, so there we've got this. Now, you want to be able to do a rendering of a view, could be something like this, but with white, a white effect?
Yes, yes.
All right.
What I call a white model.
Yeah, so there's two different ways, or actually there's a few different ways to do this. One is you go to the 3D view options, and in ArchiCAD 20 and later, or is it 21 and later, we have 3D styles. 3D styles, you can have some presets, and one of them is a monochrome model. If I go here to monochrome, shadows off, This is one that's preset, already saved, and it's using monochrome. You can also have a monochrome in effect in the vectorial. So when we're doing it in the OpenGL mode, we get a certain style, very instant, and it is very fast. We can move around it smoothly. You mentioned that you're having some challenges controlling line weights or something?
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay, so in OpenGL, the 3D styles command here has the ability to show contours best. You can make the contours heavier if you want, like this. So now it just stands out. I just changed that in the 3D styles dialog, and now this particular one is actually updated. So in other words, if I switch to another one, switch back, it's still got this contour.
Okay.
So that's something that you can change. You could also create a new one and have one with thin lines, one with thick. So what do you think of this? Is this going the direction you want, or what?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so that's the simplest thing, is just to change the contours. Now, if we look at hidden line vectorial, it will be, it can have colors, but we can also say make it monochrome here. So I'll say like this. And you can see that it is, similar, but one difference is that if I zoom in on this, it'll take a little longer to zoom in. You can see all the wireframe stuff that it's doing, but it will be totally crisp line work. Whereas if I'm in the monochrome one here, it may or may not have the same crispness. You can see some little artifacts in places, because OpenGL is a quick approximation. But you may want to just see how you prefer the hidden line one. Now, the hidden line takes longer to do, but it is generally going to be a crisper result.
A little cleaner.
Yeah, and if you were to save this out onto a layout sheet, it would be pure and crisp, whereas you may recall from earlier in today's session, someone had a 3D view and it was a little bit fuzzy. That was because it was a, what do you call it, an OpenGL view, which was basically a bitmap. So you can save this view if you want. So if I go and in the view map, say save this view, and I'll just call this, I think this one was the, we'll just call it 3D vectorial here, and then I'll switch my view to the monochrome here, and go and save this view as 3D monochrome. So now we do have them saved, and I can go back and forth. You can see this is the 3D vectorial. This is the 3D monochrome. Now the other choice here is the background. In other words, there was a setting for whether you wanted to have a color in the background or a ground plane. But these views can be placed onto a sheet, and the vectorial one will definitely be crisp and clean, whereas the OpenGL may not be.
Very good.
So anything else that you want me to go over at the moment?
I've noticed when I tried to render, the line weight was really screwy.
When you tried to do what?
When I tried to render a 3D view.
Okay, so you're talking about rendering, you're talking about going to the document menu, creative imaging, photo render?
Yes.
Okay, so if we look at the photo rendering settings here, so photo rendering is using a totally different approach, and there are actually there's no lines if you're using CineRender. Are you using CineRender or one of the sketch renderings?
I think I tried CineRender.
Okay, so CineRender does not draw lines. CineRender only draws textures and surfaces with lighting. So you will not have any contour lines. Now, you said that you were, what do you call it, seeing the line weights were funny?
Yeah, they were very, very heavy.
Okay, so I don't know where you see line weights. You can see in the preview that CineRender is just shades. We don't even see the edges defined. If I go and say photo render this, we're going to see it go create a view, and I don't know how long it'll take. Hopefully it'll be relatively quick, but it will. It doesn't have any line weights.
I follow you.
So if you were using one of the sketch renderers, which give you sort of a more impressionistic effect, then there may be some settings for line weights for them. But for cine render, it's intended to be just more like a photograph where lines are interpreted by your eye, but not drawn in.
I see.
Now, this is general purpose balanced, so that is basically one preset. There are other things where you can, choose this, and there are, I think, some options for monochrome if you wanted, like this particular one, if I wanted to just play around with it, the effects, monochrome, I can turn on monochrome here, white model, and then refresh this here. And not quite sure what it's going to do here, but we'll see the preview. Yeah, now you can see it's a white model, although we've got shades of gray. I'm not quite sure whether some things are just in shadow or have some color, but it certainly looks more like the white model we were talking about.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else before we finish?
No, I think that's it.
All
I
right.
really appreciate the help.
My pleasure. All right, so want to thank Will and Andrej and Ted and Michiel for sharing projects today, and Peter Spellman, I'm sorry, didn't quite have enough time for you. I'll send you a link to the coaching program call afterward. If you like getting feedback from me, if you like getting some insights for your ArchiCAD work, then I invite you to check out my coaching program, which happens usually every week, where I spend several hours answering questions. You can go to bobrow.com/coaching. If you want more of a thorough resource, a comprehensive resource for working with ArchiCAD effectively, check out the 2020 course, which is my new revamped version of best practices methods, bobrow.com/2020. And I would be happy to share my knowledge and insights with you so that you can get the most out of ArchiCAD. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to getting more comments, feedback, suggestions. We'll be back with another ArchiCAD user webinar about a month from now. I don't have the actual subject, but there's some things that I'm hoping to share or planning to share over the next few months. So I'll announce that when I have the details. So thank you all for joining me. It's my pleasure to help you with your ArchiCAD projects and your ArchiCAD work in general. Take care. Bye-bye.